All right, so it's time to time and then check center lines on the cam and referencing your cam cards, but it's time to get the engine and the cam and the timing all set and correct here. So you guys can see that I have my degree wheel on and stuff already, but I'm gonna go over this real quick here with you guys. So all you guys really need is a piston stop, a degree wheel, a dial indicator with a long extension, and some checker springs. CAMSHAFTS sells a kit that has all of this in one. Some guys don't like the smaller wheel and they opt to get a bigger one. That's just preference. You can easily use the included wheel, the included pointer, everything to get this all within specification here. Now, what I want to note is that when you're checking the driver's side bank, you want to make sure that you're checking cylinder 6. Yes, you can check any cylinder you want, but the problem is if you do anything besides cylinder 6, it's going to require you to disassemble your cams and timing components and then move your checker springs over to a proper cylinder, because what's going to happen is if you're on cylinder 6, it's going to be the same as cylinder number 1 over here on this side. So when you check this bank and you're referencing, your cam card and your opening and closing times and yada, 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 you're going off of cylinders 1, 6, and then either a center line method or 50 thousandths before and after. It is just whatever there's 2 methods you can check. You can check center lines, or you can verify opening and closing times to verify the timing and degreeing these camshafts. Now, let me be very clear real quick here, guys. If you're running VCT like I am, there's no adjustability whatsoever. So whatever it is, that's what it is. You can't get it within spec, right? You guys can see right here on a checker spring, I'm at 139 degrees for a center line. So I'm 10 degrees retarded right now. The larger the number, that means retard. The shorter the number, that means advance. So because I'm larger than my number, I am 10 degrees retarded right now. And these have no lockout plates, so you can't churn these to get within specification. And to note here, if you're running VCT, it's going to be off. It's going to be wrong. All of these numbers that CompCam has specified is probably at a fully running optimum engine with VCT, which all of this stuff will change once VCT comes into play anyways, because your tuner will tell your camshaft to either, in my case, advance 10 more degrees to get my center line correct. So let's get you guys caught up to where I'm at here. You guys have bare cylinder heads. They'll look like this side right here. Right, should be the point that you guys are at on your guys' build. Both heads should look like this. No cams, just your valves and stuff installed. Now, on this particular head, which is the first head you have to assemble, you want to make sure that you don't have your regular valve springs in, that you have your checker springs installed on either intake side. It doesn't matter which one you check. You can check the left or you can check the right for both the intake and exhaust. As long as it's cylinder number 6, you're good to go. So I have one checker spring on the intake side and one checker spring on the exhaust side right now. Next, you want to install your piston stop, just hand tight. And for now, you don't want anything protruding out, because we don't exactly know. Well, I know where mine is, but you guys won't know where your crankshaft relation is to your cam yet. So you want to make sure that your piston stop is up, but just inside of the cylinder head. Next, with your piston stop installed, go ahead and insert your guys' camshafts. This is after you have your valve springs in. The entire head will not have any followers or lash adjusters installed. The only 2 places that's going to have a follower and a solid adjustable lash adjuster is going to be the cylinders that you guys are checking, which in this case is number 6 on the driver's side. The reason why you need a solid adjustable lash adjuster is because if you only have a solid one and you put it in here and then you wiggle your follower and it's loose, that means that you have too much lash between the top of your follower and the bottom of your base circle. What that's going to do is going to give you a false reading, because the cam isn't actually going to open the intake valve how it's supposed to, and you're going to get an inaccurate reading here. The opposite occurs when you have positive lash, meaning that, like, let's say hypothetically you guys put too many spacers underneath the solid adjustable lash adjuster, and now your cam doesn't even sit in the journal, it sits above it, because that base circle is sitting on the tension of that follower. And in order to close that follower down, you either have to press down on the camshaft, but the problem with pressing down on the camshaft and either tighten it down with the caps or whatever is you're opening that valve when you're doing that. You're partially opening the valve. So the way that you want to do is you want zero lash, meaning that you don't want any wiggle room whatsoever, but you don't want to also make it to where this cam is opening the valve while it's on the base circle. When your camshaft is on the base circle, which is the perfectly circular side right here, not the lobe portion, your valves should be closed. And that will allow you to zero out your dial indicator to the base circle, so that way you can get your readings for piston to valve, which is what we're trying to check here. So verifying that you have zero lash may take a couple times. And MMR sells a solid adjustable lash adjuster kit, which is the only one that I know of that you can purchase. Machine shops usually build them themselves, and they have their own thing. But basically it comes with a solid lash adjuster that you can't move. It's solid, right? And the way that you adjust it is you either add spacers underneath the solid lash adjuster, or you take away spacers. Just to give you guys an idea, the intake side does not have a spacer. It's in there by itself, and it gave me my correct lash that I was looking for. The exhaust side does have a spacer. It needed a spacer because when I put it in there without one, the follower wiggled and there was too much play. I put one spacer in there and it took away the slack and didn't increase the height too significantly to where I was opening the valve on the base circle. If you guys don't have comp cams, right, and are running an OEM camshaft, this is the same exact procedure. Comp cams on their website has a magnificent set of instructions that you guys can use to reference when installing these cam caps. But essentially, when you're mocking this up right here, you're not torquing anything down, You're not torquing anything down, right? We're applying maybe 8-10 foot-pounds, but it's really just hand tight. And you want to make sure that you're tightening from the center out. So just an example, it would go here, 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 and here. You're alternating, but you're actually tightening the cam down from the center out. It's the opposite when you're taking it apart. You're going to take away from the outside in. So now we have the cams on, right? You guys got your cam caps on, all of this shit, right? You won't have this mocked up just yet, but you will have the cams in, the caps in, your checker springs in, and the followers in with your piston stop in right now. Now is time to actually install the hard part, which are these VCT phasers. If you guys are not running this part, this is going to be a little bit easier for you guys because the tensioner is facing upward from the factory, and it allows you to move the guide, which would be this. It allows you to move the guide to the side like this, so that way you can slide over your secondary chain. When you use the MMR part, which switches the tensioner upside down, giving the tension in the proper orientation, giving it the right geometry, your secondary tensioner looks something like this. And when you try to turn it to get it the same way as the top, it hits the back of the cylinder head here, and you can't actually turn it all the way. It makes it very difficult to install these phasers onto the actual cam. So a little tip. Leave all of the hardware out. of your cam cap if you're using MMR part. If you're not using the MMR part, you can just put it on like normal. But when using this part, take all the hardware out and leave this cap loose. Get your timing chain marks correct here, just to show you guys. Well, I turned the cam or the block over plenty of times, so they're not actually gonna line up. But you should have one colored link on the exhaust side and two colored links on the intake side, lining up with the actual indicator mark on the back of that little sprocket gear on the back of the phaser. You insert that onto the cylinder head. Comp Cams gives you an orientation here. Let's see if I can locate it. Right in front of my face, this page right here. All right, so figure G is the one that's for the driver's side cylinder head. If you notice, those are the indicator marks of where the cam should be set at in the cylinder head prior to putting the phasers on. You can purchase this MMR cam holding tool. It's a fantastic tool and sets right over here, or you can use a wrench. But the problem with using a wrench is usually the sides are a little too large and you can't get in like tough areas like this one right here with a regular wrench. It may be necessary to move your cam slightly forward or back and while rotating the phaser to get it to seat inside of there. But like I was saying earlier, by allowing the hardware out, what you can do is you can essentially move that cam cap up and down, which is going to give you the wiggle room you need to fit the bottom portion of the chain in, and then walk your phasers on, moving this. The second set of hands really helps, but it is doable by yourself. I did it. It is just a little bit of a pain in the ass and time consuming, which is why I didn't really record it. You guys would be here an hour watching me put this thing on. So you guys will see the pain of putting this shit on, but it's not rocket science. It's pretty easy to get. All right, so we got the phasers on, we got the cams in. What's next? Next, we actually have to make sure that we're in time. All there is to timing a Coyote is making sure that your camshafts are in a relation to your crankshaft that has the correct firing order, right? That's all there is to timing a Coyote. It's not something where you need a fucking degree wheel or anything like that. The simplest way to timing a Coyote is you line the timing chain marks up. That's it. That's all there is to timing a Coyote. You verify that your secondary chain here has the timing links correctly to the right marks. And then once they're on the right marks, you will see this little left guy right here faced more up to the 12 o'clock position, right? That left phaser mark is important because this is the left cylinder head here. Your first timing mark for your primary chain, which is the big one, should line up with that left mark that looks like this guy right here, right? So if I had the block oriented correctly, this guy would be up here and your color link would be matched with that one. And then you would match the other color link with your sprocket right here that goes over your crank snout. Once you have those in line, you want to apply your timing guides. Once you get your timing guides on, avoid using the timing tensioner. It's too time consuming and it's a pain in the ass to retract it every time. Using just a little vice grip or a little clamp will be perfectly suitable to give tension to the guides, so that way your chain is always under tension when you're checking these specifications. So now we got our timing chains on, we got everything in time. What's next? The next step that we're going to do is actually verify top dead center. This is where you will need a degree wheel, right? So you take your degree wheel and you put it on your crank snout here. And what do? How do I verify top dead center? Well, the first thing you do is you rotate the piston to where it's roughly at top dead center. How you can tell if it's roughly at top dead center is one of two things. If you have the piston stop out, you can put an extension in and rotate the crankshaft until you see it come all the way to its highest point and then start to come back down. That's roughly top dead center. If you have your piston stop in like I told you guys and don't want to take it out, you can verify a second way. You can just look underneath the block and then see where the connecting rod for that particular cylinder is. Is it traveling up? And then once it starts to travel down, you know you just passed top dead center. Once you're roughly in the ballpark of top dead center, this is where you're going to take your flathead screwdriver and you're going to come in here and you're going to thread your piston stop now. So let me, right here. So as we're bringing that piston stop down into the cylinder, you want to make contact with the piston. Once you make contact with the piston, you're going to rotate the crankshaft just a little bit more opposite of going towards the top, right? And then you're going to thread this down even more and then touch your piston once again. Once you touch your piston, you want to come to your degree wheel, and let's say hypothetically we were right like here, right? Just for an example. Let's say we landed on, oh, that camera is fucked. I don't know why that angle's like that. There we go. So this is what I see. Right here, it looks like it's like 28 or something, but here's my angle. We're about 28 and a half, almost 29 degrees right now. What we would want to do then is rotate the crankshaft in the opposite direction, right? So we would come something like this, all the way back around until it touches the piston stop again. But let's say this time it's a completely different number. It's like this, 44. What you'll do is you'll take that number and you'll add it to your first number. You will divide it by 2, and that will give you the value where each side should lie at. So I use odd numbers, so it's not really going to be easy, but let's say hypothetically this side was 60 and this side was 40, right? Those two added divided by 2 would be 50, so you would want to bring this side without moving the wheel. I'm just moving it right now to kind of give you guys an idea of, let's say we landed on 50, or sorry, let's say we landed on 60 here, and we need to get it to 50 to get it right, to get our top dead center right. This is when you take off your attachment, you loosen your wheel here, and then you physically move the wheel to 50. So once we move the wheel to 50 and we retighten this back up, we then recheck. We go back to the sides, right? We come back over here, and let's say, boom, right there. I'm on 50. Boom. So we just nailed 50 there, it stopped. So then I rotate all the way back again to the other side. And let's say, boom, once again, I'm at 50. These have to be exact. If you guys are like a half a degree or a degree off, that is going to make a huge difference. You need to be money here. And what I notice is that these pointers are too thick, but they don't give you an accurate reading. Some people read to the left of it, some people read to the right. All I did was I added a chamfer, a little point to it to give me a more accurate reading that I could reference off of my wheel. So that's how you locate top dead center. Once you guys had verified TDC, right? Your wheel is now in relation to the crankshaft, which is tied to your camshaft here, and everything is timed. So we're at TDC. What's next? Well, the entire purpose of doing this is to check piston to valve clearance. The reason why it's important to check piston to valve clearance, let me backtrack. The times that you want to check piston to valve clearance, when you do a camshaft change, when you do a valve change, when you do a piston change, when you change pistons, cams, or valves, or a combination of the three, you want to verify piston and valve clearance because you changed out an OEM component that no longer is going to have the values that Ford offers. It's going to have its own values because the aftermarket company designed it completely different from what Ford did, in an effort to improve something, whatever it is, right? So we have to verify piston and valve clearance. So what I'm doing now is once we're at top dead center, we want to verify 10 degrees after top dead center and 10 degrees before top dead center. So to give you guys a little bit of a tip here on the driver's side, you want to go 10 degrees after top dead center first, so that way when you're checking the rest of them, you're always going in a clockwise motion. So we'll go counterclockwise here, like 500 thousandths, give the chain some preload, come back over here to 10 degrees. God, I don't know why the camera is showing it that far off, but to me, like, it's dead on 10, but on the camera, it's showing you guys at like 12. Anyways, here, we'll just bring it to you guys, so your perception here. There you go. It's off on my end, but it's right on your guys' end. So we're at 10 degrees after top dead center. What we're going to do now is we're going to take a flathead screwdriver, and we're going to have the dial indicator set to the retainer here, and we're going to zero it out. Or sorry, we're not going to zero that out. My apologies. Or yes, we are. Yeah, sorry. No, I was right. So we have the dial indicator on here, and we'll zero it out right to 10 degrees real quick. Next, this is very tricky and is going to take a little bit of time to kind of get right here. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that half of your flathead is on the retainer and the other half is on the keeper. If you don't get your flathead on the keeper, what's going to happen is you're going to push the retainer hat and it's going to walk a weird angle and potentially even fling out your keepers. So you have to make sure you're on the keeper and the retainer. I don't even know if you guys can see that very well. So right there. So I'm touching the valve right there. Part of my guy is on the keeper, which is the silver part there, and the other part's on the retainer, which is the black circle right here. You're then going to press down until the valve makes contact with the piston, and then you're going to read your dial indicator, whatever that value may be. Just to show you an example of what my numbers turned out to be. So we were at 10 degrees after top dead center right now. On the intake side, because you'll have to check this for each cam. You'll have to check it for your intake side on your driver's side, your exhaust side on your driver's side, your intake on your passenger side, and your exhaust cam on your passenger side as well. I had 280 thousandths. The minimum clearance that you need on the intake side at any given point in the timing of the Coyote needs to be minimum 80 thousandths. If you have under 80 thousandths in any of these sections that you're checking here on either side, you need to change something. You need to increase head gasket thickness. You need to change to a different piston potentially, but odds are is you're not going to want to change your pistons, so you're going to accommodate somewhere else. And the most common way to do that is your head gasket. You can check 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, 1, top dead center. It's not necessary to check every single one unless if your values are really close to the minimums. But you can see my values are nowhere close to the minimums. I have 255 thousandths minimum clearance all through the timing of 10 after all the way to 10 before. The way you check with 8 now, so we just checked 10, right? So you'd come over here and rotate the crank to 8. Boom, we're at 8. And then you would recheck again. Re-zero out your dial indicator and then recheck. I had this question, so you guys might have this question. my question that I brought up to my professor was, let's say I'm not on the base circle, right? I'm on the lobe and the valve is starting to open somewhere in this value here, 10 before to 10 after. According to my cam card, that's not going to happen. And if you guys are running stage 3 comp cams, it's not going to happen either. But there is a scenario where that can happen. And my question was, if the cam is already starting to open the valve, do I need to count that opening space plus whatever the valve is at to the piston? And my instructor said no, because at any given time in the orientation of this engine, in the timing cycle, right, regardless if the valve is open or not, it should have a minimum clearance of 80 thousandths to the piston. So if that valve is starting to open and the piston, and that valve is chasing that piston down, right, those clearances should be minimum 80 thousandths, and mine is. And you guys' should be too. Even if I stuck with the stock head gasket, which I increased my head gasket because I didn't think I was going to have enough clearance, I would still have way more than enough piston to valve clearance. But what I wouldn't have enough of is I wouldn't have my minimum of 50 thousandths quench. What quench is the flat part of your piston. I don't have one around here because they're in the block, but it's the flat part of your piston, right? When it comes to top dead center, so we'll say we're here, this is your piston, it's the space from the top of that piston to your cylinder head. What that usually involves is it involves the thickness of your head gasket plus your piston deck height. But because I'm running a 0 deck, the only clearance that I'm gonna have for quench is my head gasket thickness. And Molly wants a minimum of 50 thousandths. So the stock head gaskets is 40 thousandths. So in order to get my quench specification right, in order to make sure that the timing chains don't have too much slack on them due to me changing the geometry of either decking your cylinder heads or decking your block, is going to be necessary to increase the head gasket. And that's exactly what I did. I'm running an 054, so this is 54 thousandths compressed head gasket from Coyote that gave me my slack that I needed from the material I removed from 0 decking the block to the material I removed from the cylinder head as well. So all we're doing is just verifying piston and valve for each bank. And right now, so far, I only have the driver's side bank all mocked up. And you guys can see that this is the process that we go through. Now, I don't know, and I haven't verified yet, and I'm going to, so I don't know if my intake center line is going to be affected because I have checker springs in versus my regular springs. So right now, using checker springs only, when I check 50 thousandths, when I check lift at 50, meaning 50 after and 50 before max lift, what I'm trying to verify is the center line. And with checker springs, it's saying I'm 10 degrees retarded. I'm hoping that number goes down maybe 2 or 3 degrees with regular valve springs, but I honestly have no idea, and I'll keep you guys posted if it does. So if your regular valve springs affect your center line, that is a question to be answered. We'll find out once I move this guy over here and get a follower in. But you'll need a regular, or sorry, not a regular, but you'll need your solid adjustable lash adjuster in there with a follower on your regular valve spring to verify intake and exhaust center lines. Right now, because I have the dial indicator on the exhaust cam, if I were to check the center line, I'm not checking the center line for this entire bank. I'm only checking the center line for this exhaust cam. That exhaust camshaft is going to have a different center line than your intake one. So don't think that this center line is just a one-time check and it's going to be the same for all 4 cams, because that's not the truth at all. My 139 center line came from the intake cam, and I haven't even checked the exhaust cam yet. prior to making this video. I'm still checking that, but you guys can see essentially what I'm trying to accomplish here by checking the center lines and stuff like that. So that's all we're at right now, and it's going to be the same exact thing for the passenger side. It's super, super time consuming. You really got to be careful and kind of understand what the instructions are telling you. And sometimes these aren't even always the best to use, because these guys got to be so technically specific with certain words and shit like that, that guys just be like, yo, what the fuck are you talking about? Why don't you just tell me that this shit should be here? Why do you got to tell me in some alien fucking super smart verbiage and shit? So I'm trying to make it a little bit easier for you guys here by making this video and showing you guys what's up. If you guys have any questions, because this is a really lengthy topic, and I honestly could be here for hours discussing each one individually, way more in depth, but I really want to give you guys the main viewpoints of what you're trying to accomplish when you're setting something like this up. Like I said, if you're running VCT, you're not going to be at your center lines, you're not going to be at your numbers, they're going to be all different, because when this thing has VCT in play, all the numbers you're checking right now change. They change because your tune is commanding the phaser to adjust your timing. This adjusts your timing here. It's not solid. That's the whole purpose of VCT, is it allows the phaser to advance or retard your cam during engine operation. You don't have to take it down and then re-degree your cam every time you want to either add or take away timing. That's why I love VCT so much. You can do it straight from your SCT device or your N-Gauge or whatever else they're making nowadays. So, if you guys have any questions, hit me up in the comments. But so far, this is where we're at, and we're just going to continue rocking on. Till next time, it's Spray Coyote.